All right, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be the aftermath video for the phenomenal Errol Spence versus Shawn Porter welterweight championship unification bout that took place last Saturday night on September 28th. Most likely is going to be the fight of the year, and it pretty much went how I thought it was going to go. I will say this: I have to congratulate Shawn Porter for using a lot of the impetus that was provided for him by Errol Spence's barbs about his lack of skill and things of that nature to push himself forward throughout the later rounds, when I thought that had Errol Spence actually stuck to the game plan that I thought he should utilize, he could have made it a much easier night for himself, as Shawn Porter's own father, Kenny Porter, stated after the fight. And that brings me to something else. Let me say this, and I tell brothers this all the time: my channel is not a fan channel. It's a pro-truth channel. That's my approach to everything that I speak about, whether it's boxing, basketball, football, politics, history, whatever it is. We have to seek out the truth and let go of the fanboyism, because that's why there's no progress. When you lead with your emotions, there's never going to be progress. The emotional fervor that we have is something that we tap into so that we can galvanize ourselves to get to a higher level, but it always has to be controlled. If you lead with your emotions, you're going to make erroneous deductions. And that's why you have people on the internet for the last couple of days talking about how Shawn Porter got robbed. No, Shawn Porter did not get robbed. As a matter of fact, even Kenny Porter and Barry Hunter, Shawn Porter's trainers, stated that they thought Errol Spence won the fight. This is what they both stated in an interview that I saw directly after the match. And then, of course, Kenny Porter came back and stated that he thinks maybe his son edged out Errol Spence, and he knows that his son lost. And for those of us who actually know how to score a fight, the few of us that there are out there, maybe only 10% of actual boxing aficionados or viewers know how to score a real fight and what the parameters are according to the Marcus of Queensberry rules. Most people just look for activity, and that's not how you score a fight. That's why Shawn Porter lost, because he was very active, but he was not landing as many pointed shots as Errol Spence was throughout the bout, from rounds 1 through 12. And I actually agree with the score of 116 to 111. I thought that Errol Spence won 8 rounds in the fight. I gave 4 to Shawn. And to be honest with you, a couple of the rounds that I gave Shawn could have went either way. I thought that Shawn Porter, to be quite honest with you, was just happy to be there. He was happy to last the entire 12 rounds. But he is a truth machine fighter. Am I saying that he was not trying to win the fight? Of course not. He was trying to win. But whenever I see someone directly after the bout run to the ring ropes all the time, acting like a black Rocky Balboa, trying to hype the crowd up even though he lost. He knew that he lost, because when the scorecards were read, he shook his head yes. He understood that he lost the bout. So I have no idea why people are running around the internet trying to act as if he got jobbed. I had a couple of cats jump into my comment section on both YouTube and Patreon talking about, are you going to apologize to Shawn Porter? Brothers, once again, this is not a fan page. Shawn Porter is a great fighter, not a great champion. There's a big difference. And that's why I likened him to Ken Norton before this bout. And I stated that the style of the fight would be very similar to the first Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier fight. The only difference is that the fighter with the one-punch knockout power will be playing the Muhammad Ali role, that being Errol Spence. And the fighter who will be playing the Joe Frazier role, the truth machine role, will be Shawn Porter, and he does not have one-punch knockout power, but he hits extremely hard. He just does not have the ability to knock down top-level, elite-level championship fighters with that one punch. But he can wear you down if you're not in great shape. So I give Shawn Porter a great amount of credit. He is a great fighter. He's a Hall of Fame fighter. But no, he's not a great champion because he's unable to beat the elite-level fighters. He's not going to beat an Errol Spence. He's going to have a hard time with a Keith Thurman, even though I don't think that Keith is quite the fighter that he was a couple of years ago when they fought. Against Danny Garcia, that fight can go either way. But just getting back to the bout, I thought that it was very obvious that Errol Spence was intent on defeating Shawn Porter at his own game. He could have made the fight much easier for himself if he just used his distance and his jab. Once again, Kenny Porter himself said that after the fight. And as I stated before I did the initial video previewing their bout, Kenny Porter is Errol Spence's biggest fan. He's damn near as big a fan of Errol Spence as he is of his own son, Shawn Porter. And that's why Shawn was so upset, because I'm sure that he's been inundated by his father with all these platitudes and laudables about Errol Spence for the last few years. He thought that Errol Spence was going to return the favor and tell him how great of a fighter he was as well, but Errol Spence decided that he was going to try to chop Shawn down with a lot of barbs. And I believe that that gave Shawn a lot of the energy that he needed in the late rounds when he dealt with that sustained body attack. And of course, cats are going to say that there were a lot of low blows, and there were. There were a lot of low blows from Errol Spence. But I say that maybe only 5% of them were purposeful. I believe that he entered the fight anticipating that Shawn was going to try to be dirty. And he was intent on using a lot of Bernard Hopkins tactics early on in the fight to see if he could weaken Shawn. And he ended up initiating a reputation for himself that he's going to have to be careful of in future fights. You don't want to be known as the guy who throws low, but let's be for real as well. Kenny Porter knew what the plan of attack was going to be on his son, and they raised his trunks. Most of those so-called low blows were right there on the belt line, and they were on the belt line of a fighter who was wearing high trunks to begin with. So that's why I say maybe only about 5% of the low blows were legit low blows. And as the referee himself stated, Shawn was holding Errol's head down, which you're not supposed to do. Errol was also holding Shawn's head down, which is a tactic that Muhammad Ali used a lot against shorter fighters, especially in the Joe Frazier fight. I stated in my preview video that basically the first 6 rounds was going to be a battle to see who would be able to dominate with the body attack. That was going to be the terrain on which their battle was fought, and that certainly was the case. It was nip and tuck through those first 6 rounds. I believe I scored it 4-2 for Spence in the first 6 rounds. And then, of course, the last 6 rounds, I also scored it 4 rounds to 2. And then you add the knockdown. That's what made the score 116 to 111. But Shawn Porter, he deserves a lot of credit. He's someone who people are always going to want to watch, but he's never going to be an A-side fighter. He's never going to be an A-side fighter because, to be quite frank with you, I don't think that he has an A-side personality or mentality. He's not someone that people are going to say, I'm going to root for him to win. And that's what makes you marketable, when people are rooting for you to win. Even though I'll say this, all of a sudden, a bunch of Shawn Porter fanboys came out of the woodworks. Dudes who I didn't see on any comment boards before the fight. All of a sudden, they were all over the internet talking about how Shawn Porter got robbed. And you know why that is? It's not because they're fans of Shawn Porter. It's because what this signifies is the elevation of Mr. Errol Spence to championship, borderline superstar level status. The higher you get, the more haters start to pop up out of the ground, like mushrooms or other forms of fungus. Because that's what a hater is. It's just fungus. It grows from soil and a piece of shit. So that's how you know, once again, Errol Spence, he's starting to ascend to a far higher level because he's starting to get haters. There was a couple of hating ass dudes commentating on the fight, that being Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia. Keith Thurman said, Shawn Porter's very successful right now. He's very impressive. I have him winning the first 5 rounds. When I heard that shit, I said Keith Thurman's ponytail must be too damn tight. Who the fuck gonna score that fight 5 rounds to 0 for Shawn Porter? Even Shawn's daddy didn't score the fight 5 rounds to 0 for his own son through the first 5 rounds. So it's very obvious that Keith Thurman, he was hoping to see Shawn win. And let me say this about Keith Thurman's mysterious hand injury, which of course, I'm not saying that he's lying per se. But for him to fight against Josecito Lopez with that hurt hand, and also fight against Manny Pacquiao with that same hurt hand, which he says impaired him by 50%. You know what that tells me? Had he beat Manny Pacquiao, he was going to use this excuse to try to avoid Errol Spence for a whole other year and just try to sit on his belt and say, well, I fought Manny Pacquiao and beat him. What do you want me to do now? But Manny surprised them. So nothing against Keith. It's very clear to me. And I think, to be honest with you, I think that both Keith Thurman and Shawn Porter would make spectacular boxing analysts. I would much prefer to hear them call the fight than Lennox Lewis or that other idiot Joe Goosen, who seems a bit slow. Once again, PBC has to change their commentating team because they're not getting the job done. Neither one of those guys are getting the job done, and I like Lennox Lewis a lot, but they're a little bit slow, and they seem to always be confused as to what exactly is going on when it comes to the action within the fight, how it's transpiring. We need guys who are quick, quick-witted and understand things as they're happening right away. But just getting back to the fight, Errol Spence was dominant to the body, as was Shawn Porter. And anytime a fighter commits to that level of a body attack, they are going to get hit in the face a lot, especially if they're going against someone who's in as great a condition as Shawn Porter was. A lot of people are saying, oh, look at Errol Spence's face and all this stuff. Of course. He committed to a body attack against a fighter who was 4 inches shorter than him. His head was right there to be hit. And he was constantly trying to pressure Shawn. I give Shawn a lot of credit. He showed a great growth in his overall craft. And I said that also before the fight. He's a much better fighter now than he was 6 years ago against Kell Brook. He was just a basic dude trying to initiate attacks on his opponent with that stomp, kind of stutter step with the triple jab against all of his opponents. All the same things over and over again. There have been a lot of wrinkles thrown into his style. I would suspect that it's Barry Hunter who has shown him how to diversify a lot of his attacks. A lot of great defensive maneuvers. When he was trapped on the ropes, he was actually able to spin out and put Errol on the ropes. So Errol was forced to acknowledge that Shawn was a much better skilled fighter after the fight than he thought he was, as he should. And that normally happens after two warriors engage in combat for 12 rounds like that, back and forth, just hitting each other upside the head. So there should be a measure of respect. But I thought it was clear. There was no controversy for me. That was an 8 rounds to 4 fight. Errol fought a great fight in that he was able to dominate his opponent in his style, which seems to be Errol's MO. He wants to get into the ring with fighters who are known for fighting a certain way and defeating them in their pathway or their overall paradigm of defeating their other opponents. So he got into the ring with Mikey Garcia. He outboxed him. I suspect, should he get into the ring with Danny Garcia, he's going to try to out-counter him. Probably lead with the jab and try to out-counter him and go to the body in the middle rounds to the late round. But we'll see. We'll see. But once again, this was a great fight. It's going to be the fight of the year, no doubt about it. I don't see another fight matching this one unless Canelo and Kovalev are able to shock us with unbelievable performances whenever they fight. I believe they're fighting in November, but we'll see. But once again, congratulations to both fighters. And Shawn Porter, he did a great impersonation of Rocky at the end of the fight. That's what I thought. When I watched it, I said, this is Errol Apollo Creed Spence against Shawn Rocky Balboa Porter. That's how this played out. Just like Rocky won. Rocky got all this credit just for lasting 15 rounds with Apollo Creed. Apollo fought a less than erudite fight in that he actually dumped his fighting style down and gave Rocky opportunities to hit him that normally he was not supposed to have. Errol Spence did the same thing. He made it an extremely exciting fight for the fans. So what's next for Errol, the true Spence? We have to ask that question now. What's next? For both fighters, really. Errol Spence, he stated, wants to fight Manny Pacquiao. But as we know, it was not Manny Pacquiao who was in the ring. Manny Pacquiao, I think, has some issues with the PBC that might start to come to the forefront later on. But who knows? Maybe they'll shock me and they'll actually sign to fight. For that to happen, though, Errol Spence is going to have to chase down Manny Pacquiao. He really is. Because as I've stated before the Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman bout, Manny Pacquiao did not come to the PBC to fight no damn Errol Spence. He came to get that big money rematch with Floyd Mayweather. That's why he's there. That's the only reason why he's there. And I think that since he's joined the PBC, he's found what many other fighters have found who joined the PBC, which is that Al Heyman treats his fighters extremely well. But still all in good, Manny Pacquiao is a legend. He's not a great fighter. He's not even a great champion. He's a legendary fighter. So he wants to fight Floyd Mayweather. That will put the cap on his career. And I'm pretty sure that he's called up Al and he was like, Al, I come here to fight Mayweather. I come here to fight the big man on campus. I don't come here to fight ponytail nigga like Keith Thurman. You have me here fighting him. Now you talk about Errol Spence. I don't come here to fight no damn Errol Spence. I come here to fight that shiny bald head Negro, Floyd Mayweather. That's why I come to fight. I want to get paid. That's what you told me. You told me if I leave Bob Arum, I come here, I get paid. You messing with me. I don't like that. I have Filipino police force come to your house. Make the fight with Mayweather. But as we all know, Errol Spence, he wants that fight with Manny. And possibly Manny can get talked into it. But the only way that I think Manny could get talked into an Errol Spence fight is if he's told by Al Heyman that if he defeats Errol Spence, there's going to be some type of bout, whether it's an actually sanctioned boxing match or maybe a high-profile, highly paid exhibition with Floyd Mayweather. I think that's the only way that they're going to be able to get Manny into the ring with Errol Spence. And that, once again, is the reason why we saw Danny Garcia jump into the ring with Errol Spence. Because I believe that Danny Garcia is a contingency plan, just in case they can't make the Manny Pacquiao fight happen, which I believe they already know it's most likely not going to happen. I think that Manny Pacquiao is just going to chill out for a few months and see where the dust settles. I hope I'm wrong, because I would love to see Errol Spence in the ring with Manny Pacquiao, just to see if Manny Pacquiao can figure out how to capitalize on certain things that Errol might not be the best at, because there are some flaws in Errol's game. I understand when fighters say, I see certain things in Errol. I understand that. But as we all know, it's different when you get inside of them ropes. But there are things that Errol does. Sometimes he can be a little bit too cocky. He allows his head to stay stationary too long, which allows him to get counters sometimes because he's looking for the power shot, especially to the body. He has good footwork, but his feet are not particularly fast. I'm sure that Manny Pacquiao believes that he can capitalize on Errol Spence's, I won't say slow, but moderate footwork speed. Those are some things that I'm sure Manny Pacquiao is looking at in case he needs to get into the ring with Errol Spence. He's already stated that he believes Errol Spence is just a modern-day Ledwaba. And for those of us who know Manny Pacquiao's history, that was the first major bout that he won in the United States to win his first major title. And he just demolished Ledwaba, so that means he has very little respect for what Errol Spence is bringing to the table, at least overtly. Behind the scenes, he might be saying, I don't get in the ring with that big nigga. He going to hurt me. You never know. But I would love to see that fight get made. I do believe that this is the fight that's going to get made, though, right here. The Danny Garcia versus Errol Spence fight. I think that Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman were sitting back in the studio, and they were allowing Shawn Porter to be their guinea pig. It's like Errol Spence is the school bully, and that one person in your crew decides to stand up to the bully, and everybody else stands back and watches how things go. And they were like, oh wow, Shawn made it through all 12 rounds. Because the Mikey Garcia fight was kind of like, okay, Mikey went 12 rounds with Errol, but it was very obvious that Errol was not opening up on Mikey Garcia. So we're not quite sure exactly what happened there. But because all of these fighters know that Shawn Porter is a truth machine fighter, he's a truth machine fighter. If you're able to defeat Shawn Porter, that means that you're an elite level fighter, or a borderline elite level champion, I should say. Because that's what Keith Thurman was considered after he defeated Shawn Porter. So they sat back and they watched to see what occurred. And even Danny Garcia stated, once again, even he stated, Errol Spence is fighting Shawn Porter's fight. Now, Errol Spence had an interview with Jason Whitlock and Marcellus Wiley. And basically, both Marcellus and Jason Whitlock broached the subject that maybe Errol might want to consider looking vulnerable against Shawn Porter so that he can draw Pacquiao. Do I think that that's the reason why he did what he did? No. I believe that he wanted to wipe the flow with Shawn Porter. He was going to try to break him down early and then walk to him late. It didn't happen that way. I knew that it was not going to happen that way. You don't just knock out Shawn Porter. He's in too great a shape, has too great a heart, and too great a chin. But once again, what I give him credit for is that he was able to keep coming forward in the late rounds, a la Rocky Balboa. What do I think will happen in the Errol Spence fight against Danny Garcia? I think that Errol Spence is going to fight him at range early, try to out-counter him, jab to the body. Well, really not jab to the body, I should say left hands to the body. See if he could break him down. Danny Garcia has very slow footwork. It's good footwork, but it's very, very slow. So Errol Spence should be able to get around him with ease. And I think that he probably outpoint. I don't think he'll stop Danny either. Danny's a little bit too strong. He's naturally strong. Great chin, great heart as well. We saw him take flush shots from Keith Thurman, and he was able to keep coming. So I think that he'll probably be able to take flush shots from Errol if Errol fights him how I think he's going to fight him, by fighting him at range. Now, if Errol decides that he's going to take the Kell Brook approach, because maybe he does not respect Danny Garcia's speed and just press him early, we'll see what happens with that. But I think that this is the fight that's going to be made. They're most likely going to fight sometime in January, early February. And this will be a tune-up fight for Errol, hopefully for a Manny Pacquiao fight, if that fight can get made. And then, of course, we have the specter of Mr. Terrence Crawford, who has a following on YouTube that believes that he's being quote-unquote ducked. Well, here's the issue with Terrence, and I've stated this numerous times. My issue with Terrence Crawford is this. he had the opportunity to sign with the PBC and fight all of these big name fighters in the welterweight division if he truly was concerned. If he truly was concerned with making his mark in the welterweight division. I believe that he is. I just don't believe that he's particularly media or business savvy. If you look at his social media, he seems to be more concerned with going out fishing and playing pool with his homeboys than making the moves that it's going to take to make the same mark at welterweight that he made at junior welter. And it's no disrespect to Terrence Crawford. A lot of his fans believe that he's underappreciated and he's underestimated. I have him 1A in my pound for pound rankings. And when you compare his resume to a Canelo Alvarez's resume, and I have him above Canelo, and I probably should not even have him above Canelo, it's not even close. Terrence's best victory was over Victor Postal. And the victory that he's the most famous for is his win over Gamboa. And Gamboa had jumped up like 2 weight classes to fight him. It looked like an older brother fighting a little brother in the ring, and Gamboa hurt him multiple times. Gamboa is still very dangerous, and he's in his mid to late 30s. So I have to see Terrence Crawford against big names, and that's why I have this photo up right here. Because I believe what should be next for Shawn Porter, because we know that he wants to rematch with Errol Spence. He wants to rematch with a lot of other fighters. He wants to fight Manny. Shawn Porter's the type of fighter that he's not going to be able to get fights with these big name guys if he doesn't have a belt. Shawn Porter and his team also seem to be a little bit disenchanted with the PBC, as well as as well as many of the judges that are associated with these sanctioning bodies and boxing commissions, because they think that they're constantly getting jobbed. And that happens when you have a fighter like Shawn Porter, who is not an A-side fighter and is also not someone with an overtly huge fan base. Now, from what I've seen on YouTube and other social media, there are a lot of people who are trying to act like they're his fans, but I believe that they're more haters of Errol Spence, which once again is going to happen when you elevate to the status that Errol Spence is in the process of elevating towards. He's only going to get more haters as his career continues, but Errol Spence basically brings everything to the table. He's a fan-friendly fighter. He leads with a lot of his heart, his courage. He has great power, so on and so forth. But once again, just getting back to the topic, this will be a great fight for both fighters right now. Because supposedly Terrence Crawford claims that he's being ducked. Allegedly, guys on the other side of the fence don't want to fight him. But once again, who is Terrence Crawford fighting? It'd be one thing if he was fighting Kell Brook and a lot of these other welterweights from around the world, but who the hell is he fighting? His last fight was against Amir Khan. So it's very clear that Bob Arum is the person that is at the root of a lot of the issues that Terrence Crawford has, and Terrence just does not have the savvy to understand this or grasp this or acknowledge this. But you're not fighting anyone, dude. And Terrence Crawford is not some 24, 25-year-old kid with a belt. He's over 30 years old. So the clock is ticking on his career. He has to make his mark in the welterweight division. He's very talented. I do see some flaws in his game, but I think that a fight with him against Errol Spence will be, of course, a magnificent bout, because I think that they both have certain flaws that the other could capitalize on. Terrence Crawford is faster than Errol. I think he can catch him. I think he can counter him as well. Errol Spence is bigger and stronger. They're both great body punchers. But in order, in my view, for Terrence Crawford to deserve that fight or build up that fight against Errol Spence, he has to fight Shawn Porter. And this would be great business for both fighters, because Shawn Porter wants that belt back. He wants to be able to challenge himself. Who better than Terrence Crawford? Another fighter who claims that nobody wants to fight him. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, once again, great fight. We'll see where things go in the careers of all these fighters. And Shawn Porter and his team, they should seriously consider calling out Terrence Crawford. That will reveal a lot of things, because supposedly the Crawford side on Top Rank, they claim that they're getting ducked. And the PBC fighters, they allege that Crawford should come over to the PBC side to earn the fight with them. Well, right now, Shawn Porter, as Errol Spence has already stated, he's a man with no land. He's a man with no land and no belt. So if he wants to get the belt, the best chances he'll have is to call out Crawford, and that would prove a lot of things. That would prove whether or not Crawford actually wants to fight one of these top welters. That would prove whether or not there's an actual issue making fights between Top Rank and the PBC. That would prove a lot of things. And once again, Shawn Porter has a lot to gain from it. He can take Terrence Crawford's belt. But anyway, peace.